Welcome to the deep dive, everybody.
Glad to be here.
Today, we're going to be diving into the history of psychiatry.
Ooh, exciting.
We want to kind of trace that path,
Yeah.
right? Like, how did we understand mental health back in the day, and how did it evolve to where we are today?
It's a fascinating journey, for sure.
And to help us navigate this journey, we've got some excerpts from a historical dictionary of psychiatry.
Oh, cool.
And we've also got this whole list of terms, key figures, concepts from its index. So it'll be like, think of it like a crash course in psych history.
I like that.
But don't worry, no dry textbooks here.
Definitely not.
We're going for aha moments, Like, oh, wow, I didn't know that.
Exactly. Make it engaging. And what's really cool about this whole thing is how much our understanding of mental health has actually changed over time.
Oh, yeah.
It's not static. It's constantly evolving, shaped by all these things, science, culture, the whole shebang.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's hop in our time machines and go way back. Like, way back to the 1700s. Can you imagine, like, walking into a doctor's office back then and saying, "Doc, I've got the vapors," or "I'm having a hysteric fit"?
Yeah, things were a little different then.
So different. And you know what's wild? Those terms, vapors, hysteric fits, they were just like catch-all phrases.
Right.
For all sorts of symptoms.
Is it not very specific?
Not specific at all. Some of which, looking back now, we might be like, oh, that sounds like depression or anxiety.
Absolutely. The understanding was just so broad back then. It makes you realize how diagnoses have evolved.
Right.
Like even the words we use.
So true. Okay, so moving on from the 1700s, we hit the 1800s. And what starts popping up? Asylums.
Ah, the asylums. A bit of a dark chapter, you could say.
Yeah, and it wasn't just, a place for the poor or the destitute. Wealthy folks were checking in, too.
Oh, yeah.
Often under this kind of like, what's the word? Euphemism, like hydrotherapy.
Hydrotherapy. It sounds fancy, doesn't it?
It does. It makes me think of like a spa day.
Well, not quite. It was often used to kind of disguise what was really going on in those institutions. And it shows you how much stigma there was around mental illness, people didn't want to talk about it openly. So they used these more palatable terms.
Like we were talking about those early diagnoses.
Exactly, a way to avoid the real issue. And, it makes you appreciate how far we've come in terms of being open about mental health today, but also how far we still have to go.
So true. So true. It's like we're peeling back these layers of history, and seeing how attitudes have shifted.
Absolutely.
But man, there's still work to be done. Okay, so I stumbled across this really interesting concept while I was prepping for this.
Okay.
It's called synesthesia.
Synesthesia.
Yeah, it's from the early 1800s. And basically there was this physician, Johann Riehl.
Okay.
And he believed that the mind could actually create physical sensations in the body, like almost like a precursor to what we now call psychosomatic medicine, Like for me, when I get really anxious, sometimes my stomach just like flips.
Oh, I totally get that. It's that mind-body connection.
Have you seen that kind of thing in your work?
All the time. Riehl was really onto something. He understood that the mind and body are not separate. They're intertwined.
They are. And as the field progressed, that concept just kept getting explored more and more. But get this. In the late 1800s, there was this big shift. Germany became the place to study psychiatry.
Germany. That's interesting.
Why Germany, though?
Yeah.
What was it about their approach to medicine and science that made it like the hotspot for psych research?
It was a confluence of factors, really. You had a strong tradition of scientific inquiry, innovative thinkers, and a growing focus on understanding the brain and mental processes.
So like a perfect storm for advancing the field.
Exactly. And it's in Germany that we meet one of the giants of psychiatry, Emil Kraepelin. This guy was a game changer.
Okay, tell me about him.
He had this revolutionary idea. What if we classified mental illnesses just like physical ones, each with its own specific set of symptoms and a predictable course?
So like he was creating a roadmap for diagnosis.
Exactly. And his work laid the groundwork for how we understand schizophrenia today, which he called dementia praecox.
Wow, that's huge. But I'm guessing treatment back then was still a whole other challenge.
You're right. Treatment options were pretty limited. Speaking of which, have you ever heard of the malarial fever cure?
Wait, they treated mental illness with malaria?
It sounds crazy, right? But that was Julius Wagner-Jareg's approach to treating neurosyphilis in the early 1900s.
No way.
Yeah, he would intentionally infect patients with malaria to induce a fever.
Oh my
And
God.
get this, he won a Nobel Prize for it in 1927.
I mean, it's kind of brilliant in a messed up way. Like,
Yeah.
they were so desperate for effective treatments that they were willing to try anything. But it also shows you how much our understanding of ethical medical practices has evolved.
For sure. That's one treatment we definitely wouldn't consider today.
Thank goodness. Okay, we can't talk about the history of psychiatry without mentioning the big name.
You're talking about Freud, right?
Of course, Sigmund Freud. It's funny, though, he wasn't actually a psychiatrist. He was a neurologist.
True, but his work completely revolutionized the field.
Completely. His collaboration with Joseph Breuer and that famous case of Anna O.
Oh yeah, groundbreaking stuff. They really opened the door to psychoanalysis, delving into the unconscious, the power of repression, the influence of early childhood experiences. I mean, these ideas still resonate today, even outside of clinical settings.
It's amazing how those concepts from over a century ago are still so relevant. But was everyone on board with Freud back then?
Not at all. Even within psychoanalysis, there were different perspectives. Carl Jung and Alfred Adler, for example, they broke away from Freud's school of thought. They developed their own theories and approaches.
So even within that specific field, there was room for debate.
Absolutely. Healthy debate is crucial for any field to grow and evolve. It challenges assumptions and pushes everyone to think critically. And then, of course, you had the anti-psychiatry movement in the 1960s, which really challenged the whole authority of psychiatrists.
Oh, right. They were basically like, hey, the way we're doing things, it's not working. It's got to change.
Exactly. Figures like R.D. Laing were questioning the medical model, saying it was too focused on diagnoses and labels. They advocated for more humane and person-centered approaches. It sparked a lot of controversy, but it definitely forced psychiatry to confront some uncomfortable truths about its practices.
I see. So it was like a wake-up call for the field.
In many ways, yes.
Like, hey, we need to look at the bigger picture here.
Exactly. It's about seeing the person behind the diagnosis.
Those challenges, they really pushed the field.
Yeah, for sure.
And there was this whole other revolution happening around the same time.
Mm-hmm.
The rise of psychopharmacology.
Oh, yeah. That was huge. Like a whole new branch growing from that tree we were talking about.
Yeah. Exactly.
Right.
In the mid-20th century, we see the discovery of the first antipsychotics, and those really changed the game.
Big time. The first one, chlorpromazine, was actually developed as an insecticide, believe it or not.
Wait, what? Like they were trying to get rid of bugs, and they accidentally found a treatment for mental illness.
Yeah. Talk about a happy accident. So chlorpromazine, which was later marketed as Thorazine, you might have heard of it, it had this calming effect on patients with psychosis.
Oh, wow.
And that really opened the floodgates for developing other meds, like antidepressants, for example. Imipramine was one of the early ones.
So this was like the beginning of a whole new era of drug development for mental health conditions, right?
Absolutely. It was a game changer.
I'm curious, like the medications that we have today, were they all influenced by this initial discovery?
Many of them were, yeah. And a lot of the research that followed focused on something called the catecholamine hypothesis.
Catecholamine hypothesis. That rings a bell. But can you remind me, like, why was that so important for researchers?
Basically, it proposed that imbalances in certain brain chemicals, neurochemicals, played a key role in mood disorders, particularly depression.
Okay.
So think of these chemicals like dopamine and norepinephrine as messengers in the brain. If the messages get messed up, it can affect your mood, your motivation, even your physical functions.
So it's like the brain's communication system.
Exactly. And if the lines get crossed, things can go haywire. This theory really shaped research for years to come, leading to many of the medications that we use today.
It's like scientists finally had a clue to start figuring out what was happening in the brain.
Right. And it gave hope to people who were struggling because now there was a potential way to actually address the underlying problem.
Yeah, that must have been huge for so many people. So who are the big players in all this research?
Well, institutions like McLean Hospital and the National Institute of Mental Health, NIMH, they became major senders for this kind of research.
They were bringing together the best minds in the field.
Yeah, trying to understand the brain, develop new treatments, really push the boundaries of what we knew. And they made huge strides in standardizing treatments, making them more evidence-based.
Moving away from those riskier treatments.
Yeah, like that malaria fever cure.
Right. Much safer options, thankfully. Okay, shifting gears a bit. It's incredible how much the way we diagnose mental illness has changed. I mean, we talked about those old-fashioned terms like vapors earlier. But how did we get to the diagnostic criteria that we use today?
That's a great question. It really highlights how diagnostic categories are fluid, you know?
Mm.
They change as our understanding evolves and also as our social and ethical values change. A really powerful example of this is the removal of homosexuality from the DSM in 1973.
Oh, yeah. That was monumental. What were the factors that led to that?
Well, there was a lot of activism from the LGBTQ plus community and growing scientific evidence that homosexuality wasn't a mental illness. It showed how social progress can really influence how we approach mental health.
It's like what was once considered a disorder can be completely reevaluated and understood in a new light. And this brings us to the DSM.
The DSM.
The Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders. That's like the Bible for diagnosing mental illness, right?
Pretty much. It's the go-to resource for mental health professionals around the world. It's gone through many revisions over the years, reflecting those changes in thinking we were talking about. But, you know, it's not without its controversies.
Really? What kind of controversies?
Well, one example is the debate around PMS and premenstrual dysphoric disorder. The inclusion of these diagnoses in the DSM has sparked a lot of discussion.
Like, is it normal or is it a disorder?
Exactly. Are we pathologizing something that's just a part of being female?
It's that fine line.
Right. Like, where do we draw the line between normal emotional experiences and something that requires a clinical diagnosis?
Have those debates led to any actual changes in the DSM?
They've definitely fueled important conversations about how we understand and define mental illness. And those conversations are ongoing. The DSM is constantly being revised and refined because our understanding is always evolving.
It shows you that the field is dynamic.
Always changing, always growing. There's always more to learn.
I mean, it's pretty mind-blowing when you think about it, right? We've come from those early asylums and, you know, some pretty questionable treatments like the malaria thing.
Oh, yeah.
To you know, sophisticated brain imaging and the whole spectrum of medications.
It's amazing.
It really is, yeah. It seems like every time we take a step forward, though, like there are new questions, new complexities.
Yeah, that's true. It's a constant journey, you know, always discovering, always learning.
Yeah, and we've gone from those vague diagnoses, you know, like vapors,
Right.
to actually being able to study the brain in ways that, you know, someone like Kraepelin could only have dreamed of.
It's true. And there have been, of course, like, you know, missteps and controversies along the way.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
But that dedication to understanding mental illness, it's never wavered. I think that's pretty inspiring.
It is. And treatment has come a long way. And even the stigma, it feels like it's slowly fading.
Slowly but surely, yeah.
Which is good.
Yeah, definitely.
It makes you, you know, kind of optimistic about the future of mental health care.
It does. I think when you look back at the history, it becomes clear that psychiatry is about so much more than just like diagnoses and treatments, you know? It's about humanity's effort to understand the human experience, really.
Yeah.
You know, what does it mean to suffer? How do we heal? What is this thing we call the mind?
And how does it all work?
Exactly.
It's like we're all explorers in a way, trying to chart this uncharted territory of the human mind.
Absolutely. And with every new generation of researchers, clinicians, we gain a deeper understanding and more tools to, you know, navigate those complexities.
That's true. What are you most curious about when it comes to mental health? Like what mysteries are you hoping will unravel in the future?
That's a good question. There's so much we still don't know, but that's what makes it so fascinating, right? The potential for discovery is huge.
Yeah, and it's not just about the science, right?
No, definitely not.
It's about continuing to challenge the stigma, advocating for, you know, better access to care.
Absolutely.
And creating a more inclusive and understanding society when it comes to mental health.
Couldn't agree more.
Yeah. Well, this deep dive, it's been really eye-opening.
Yeah, it's been fun.
It has. And it's a good reminder that understanding mental health is a process, a collaborative one.
Yeah, it takes all of us.
It does. A huge thank you to you for walking us through this fascinating history.
My pleasure. Always happy to talk about this stuff.
And to all of you out there listening.
Yeah, thanks for tuning in.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the world of psychiatry. There's always more to discover, so keep those minds curious.
Keep asking questions.
You